She stood there trembling, not from the cold alone but from the weight of humiliation pressing against her chest, her fingers clutching the thin, worn fabric wrapped around her baby as the evening lights of the café glowed warmly behind the men seated at the table, a man who looked like he belonged to another world entirely, tailored suit crisp, posture composed, a half-finished plate of food resting casually in front of him, and when she finally found the courage to speak, her voice barely rose above a whisper, "May I have your leftovers, sir?" A question that carried hunger, fear, and a mother's desperation all at once. The man froze, fork suspended in midair, his eyes lifting slowly to meet hers, and in that instant something unexpected happened, because instead of irritation or disgust, what he saw was not a beggar but a young woman kneeling on cracked pavement, her knees red and sore, her cheeks hollow yet still soft with youth, her eyes a startling shade of blue filled with a pain that felt painfully familiar, a pain he had spent decades trying to forget. The baby stirred softly in her arms, letting out a small sound that pierced the quiet between them, and the man's chest tightened as memories rushed back, memories of a childhood he rarely acknowledged, of nights when hunger had gnawed at him so fiercely that pride dissolved into shame, of a mother who once whispered apologies while pretending a glass of water was enough to fill an empty stomach. He set his fork down slowly, the clink against porcelain echoing louder than it should have, and gestured for her to stand, but she shook her head immediately, afraid to offend him, afraid that even a single wrong move would shatter this fragile moment of possibility. "Please," she added quickly, eyes darting to the plate, "I don't want money. Just what you won't eat." The word struck him harder than any accusation ever had, because money was the one thing he had in excess, the thing he believed could fix everything, and yet here was someone asking for the bare minimum, not charity but survival. He rose from his chair, startling her so badly that she instinctively tightened her hold on the baby, and when he spoke again his voice was gentler, stripped of the authority that had made boardrooms fall silent. "What's your name?" he asked, and after a moment she answered, "Elena," barely audible, as though saying it too loudly might cost her this chance. He introduced himself simply as Daniel, leaving out the titles, the headlines, the fortune attached to his name, because in this moment none of that mattered. He pulled out the chair across from him and asked her to sit, and when she hesitated he reassured her with a nod so sincere that she finally lowered herself into the seat, still clutching her baby protectively, her eyes never leaving his face. He signaled the waiter and ordered another full meal, not leftovers, not scraps, and when Elena protested, shaking her head in panic, he met her gaze steadily and said, "No one eats leftovers at my table," a sentence so simple yet so powerful that her eyes filled with tears she could no longer hold back. As the food arrived, the aroma alone made her hands tremble, and she apologized again and again, words tumbling over each other, explaining how she had lost her job when her baby fell ill, how rent had swallowed her savings, how shelters were full and kindness had become rare, and Daniel listened in silence, his chest aching more with every word, because her story was not rare, it was invisible, buried beneath the noise of a world that celebrated success while quietly ignoring suffering. He watched her take careful bites, slow and deliberate, as if afraid the food might disappear if she moved too quickly, and when she finally fed the baby with a small bottle she had tucked into her bag, Daniel turned away briefly, blinking back emotion he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Something in her eyes, gratitude mixed with resilience, unlocked a door inside him, and suddenly the life he had built, the billions, the accolades, the power, all felt strangely hollow compared to the simple act of two people sharing a meal. When Elena finished, she thanked him again, preparing to leave, already bracing herself to return to the uncertainty of the streets, but Daniel stopped her, asking where she would go tonight, and when she admitted she didn't know, he made a decision that would change both of their lives. He arranged a warm place for her to stay that very night, then something more permanent, then something she never expected, a job, not out of pity but because he believed in her capability, because he saw strength where the world had only seen desperation. Weeks turned into months, and Elena's life transformed in ways she once thought impossible, stability replacing fear, hope replacing survival, while Daniel found himself transformed as well, rediscovering a sense of purpose that no acquisition had ever given him. He funded shelters, restructured his company's hiring practices, and told her story, not her name, not her face, but her humanity, using his influence to remind the world that dignity should never be conditional. And years later, when asked in an interview what moment changed his life, what miracle reshaped his heart, he didn't talk about deals or breakthroughs, he talked about a quiet evening outside a café, about a young mother who asked for leftovers, and about the moment he looked into her eyes and remembered what it meant to be human. If this story touched your heart, if you believe small acts of kindness can create life-changing miracles, then subscribe to the channel now, because every story you watch helps us share more hope, more humanity, and more reminders that compassion still matters.